So, President, again, your story is inconsistent. Let us go further. After that, it says, the president told us in January this year when he met the press, he says, as for him, anybody who orders such a payment is criminally minded, highly irresponsible, naivety at its best. Remember all of it. And he said
everybody. He said it would be criminally minded on his part.
So therefore, anybody who do that is criminally minded.
But
let us look at
forget,
so
he had stated reasons why it will be criminally minded.
Yes.
Because he's giving indication that
yes.
it is not the work of the president
yes.
to order for such payments. And
yes.
that he's been a commissioner of IRS before,
yes.
he's been a vice president, and he's been president for 2 years. And he knows that the work of the president does not include ordering for such payments to be done.
Fantastic. Fantastic. No, let's stop there. Let's stop there. The work of the president. And I remember him saying that even in previous administrations, if they were involved in ordering of payments,
those who are saying so may be aware of something else that he doesn't know.
That he doesn't know.
In the past.
Very good.
Presidents used to order for payments.
I like that.
So
order for payment.
Yeah.
Let me write that word down. Order for payment. Okay. So, moving on. The same president said, therefore, that as for him, this money, in terms of judgment debt, is in the budget. So when they are going to pay such money, he doesn't interfere or order payment. Just like Kofi also reminded, isn't it? Okay. So how come a president who will not interfere in the payment of judgment debts interfered for judgment debt to be stopped?
Okay.
How come? He doesn't interfere. This is budgetary allocation. Judgment debt. The president does not interfere. And yet the president interfered in the stopping of the judgment debt. That means he can interfere in the payment of it.
So your point is it's also inconsistent.
Another inconsistency
in the Yoko report.
From this one, that's why I say I'm moving from the Yoko report to go to the chronology of the president's involvement. Okay. And this is the Meet the Press, which all Ghanaians watch live. And that's why we want all the Yoko this to be live, so that it's not just what Yoko will tell us that we'll listen to. So now another inconsistency, Mr. President. This is what we are saying. You who will not interfere in the payment, you interfere in the non-payment. Is that not interference? Does that not show that you have the right and the power and the authority to stop payments and therefore to order payments?
It says you
then we are looking. Payment. Oh, let us look.
It's different from it.
Now that when it was taken to court, he said, Betty, take this to court. They took it to court. If you want to get rid of such an issue, the two ways you can come to the court, mistake or fraud. Why is it that Martin Amidu chose fraud and before it was mistake? To make it a bit gentle, to soften the blow, to make it not look as fraudulently misrepresented with collusion, criminal activity as it was, to whitewash it, to call it mistake. Unfortunately, it never worked because the second attorney general in the matter looked at it again with all the things available and said, no, this is not right. Then we are asking the question again, including the bribes, that if the state attorney, I'll say that the one, not the one who pounded the fufu, the one who just drank a bit of the soup, is getting 400,000. What were other people who themselves cooked the cassava, pounded it, made the soup, and put the goat meat inside? What did they get?
Who would these other people be?
He should tell us. Yoko should tell us all the other names. Well, he mentioned Paula Siminu right now. More names.
Okay.
There are more names.
Now
Matilda, please.
No, we're not finished with this discussion. I think you've made your preliminary
submission.
If
you have warned me that, you have 1 minute, I beg you. But I need to
you
land
have 1 minute.
Please. There are so many things here.
We'll come back
and before I come back to the report, because you said we would, so I trust you. Arrest Asafo Mafo. What? When they go and arrest all the people in the Ministry of Finance first, those who are involved, arrest the Attorney General's office, previous and now.
Who's saying
arrest the Chief of Staff for not showing the letters to the President supposedly. What are we talking about?
Who is saying arrest?
Some people are saying now he should be arrested. And now yesterday, I don't want to go into that now because we know what they say. But let me ask you a question. When they were going to chop the money, why didn't they call Asafo Mafo to tell them that money is not choppable? They didn't. But now that they've taken the money and chopped it, then they go and call Asafo Mafo afterwards. What kind of evil is that?
Thank you.
You should have allowed the man to chop some before you call him.
Okay, thank you. Let's hear Kofi on this.
This issue.
Maybe you can start from his chronology of what he sees as the inconsistencies between the report and what the
start from where he wants, because he doesn't need to answer.
Thank you
and
very
put himself
much.
into further trouble.
I will try and look at all that you've done. Let me first and foremost greet your viewers and listeners and indicate that democracy and rule of law is growing every other day, and gradually a fight against corruption is being pushed to the next level by the actions initiated by the president and all other bodies, especially the Attorney General, the immediate past Attorney General Martin Amidu, through the support of the president. Mike tried to mix up the issues, and I will attempt to correct some of the mishaps. There was the first attempt to settle this matter out of court through an agreement reached by the AGs and his and her officials and some persons from Ministry of Finance to pay the money without going to court. At that stage, the president stopped it. And that is why, if you remember, the Auditor General had cause to issue another statement after some discussions.
At which stage did he stop it?
Please. After some discussions on this matter, where it was indicated clearly that based on the query that was raised, the check so issued was stopped, so it was not effected. Payment can be done in terms of directives, but the check cannot actualize as a result of stoppage. So yes, you may be right in terms of quoting dates, but it didn't mean that the money got into Woyome's account, because the issue was raised at Bank of Ghana. And he himself rightly stated so, that when it got to BOG, Bank of Ghana, payment was stopped as a result of the concern raised by the president. Following that, Alfred Woyome instructed his lawyers to go to court. So they filed a case in court where the Attorney General did not enter defense. And now we are getting reasons why they did not enter any defense. The principal state attorney, who should have done so, claims that he was part and parcel of the earlier negotiations to agree to pay 41 million Ghana cedi to Alfred Agbesi Woyome. So he didn't see the reason why he should go to court to go and defend the position of the state. So he stayed away from court.
Was he the same person who filed the writ, or somebody else did?
The writ is usually filed on behalf of the Attorney General. I don't know whether he was, but they say he was responsible for this case. That's what the Yoko report is telling us. He was responsible for the case. And he refused to file defense because he was a party to the discussions earlier. So now we are seeing reasons why the then Attorney General, the unit, did not file any defense on behalf of the state as instructed by the president. So there was a default judgment. And now payments have to commence. That is why the first tranche of payment of 17 million have to be effected. But even before that was done, from the report we all got and per the documentations available, the president has also ordered the Attorney General that go to court and stay execution. And that was where the first appearance or the first day of execution by then Honorable Betty Modidrisu took place. That mistaken belief. But having filed this mistaken belief also, it looks more like they went to sleep in terms of appearing in court. Rather, they went back for some pre-trial conference. The lawyers know it better what they do. At that pre-trial conference, they agreed to some settlement. So even the president's order to stay the execution of the court's judgment was not followed. That is where I have a problem. But it is not what Mike is saying that happened, that payment was done and then the president was ordering and they were trying to confuse the dates.
Do you know perhaps at what point that stay was filed? Because again, in all the narratives...
The stay was filed in September of 2000.
Problem.
The actual date, I can't remember. Then the pre-trial conference was done in December, somewhere in December. So it means they filed a stay, and instead of continuing to fight and show proof that it was mistaken belief, they did not file the case to show proof that it was mistaken belief. They
when I was talking, Kofi interrupted 1 minute, so I just want to help him here. Do you know that when they went to file the stay of execution, according to even the previous erroneous one so far, which was April, and now we found out that the payment was in February, they were actually in contempt of court because the court thought no money had been paid, ordered 17 million to be paid, and yet 17 million had already been paid in February. That alone too was another deceit to the court.
The February payment didn't go before court. That was why I was telling you that there was some kind of agreement.
So why did they tell the court that they've already paid 17 million?
Earlier, they were
You
trying
see,
to do...
the story is so bad.
They were trying to do
Thank
their
That's why you
own...
can't use
Sorry,
dates.
thank you.
They were trying to do their own arrangements. When the president decided to stop it, and at that stage, the president has every right as somebody who is supposed to be checking our affairs to stop.
Yes.
Which he did. But now, the plaintiff now decided that, okay, I'll go to court to seek court orders. So when he went and got the court orders, it was now difficult for it to be stopped other than you going through the court process. That was where the Attorney General was ordered to initiate process to stay execution of that. But the court said no. Since the payment for the first tranche has already passed, the date for payment has already passed, make sure you effect that payment.
And this
But
was
before-
sometime in what?
Sometime after June.
Okay.
Sometime after June. Make sure you effect that payment, but make sure that Alfred Agbesiwoyome show proof that when you win your stay of execution, when you win that case, he can refund the money plus any other interest therein.
Sure.
Whether that was done or not, I cannot tell. I don't work at the AG's department.
But we now
The
know that ultimately the money was paid.
the money was paid.
Let's assume that it was without recourse to the president, because at the press briefing he said he was not aware that monies had been paid.
Yeah.
What does that say?
He said one, he did not order for the payment. And
Maybe
the
we can
report-
listen to the sound,
The
because I
report,
think there's...
the report is clear that he did not order for payment.
Sorry,
And because he did not order for payment, it's also quite clear that he was unaware. Because nowhere in the report are we told that the president at a particular time of all these payments was briefed that indeed your order for stay of execution is not being effected and rather we are effecting payment. Yes, you can see letters copied to Chief of Staff and so on and so forth. I have gotten wind of one particular letter whose content is different. Like you have a letter copied to the Chief of Staff, Honorable Minister of Finance and Economic Planning, Attorney General, so and so and so and so. When you take the content of the same letter to the Chief of Staff, it's different from the same letter, the same file number to the Minister of Finance and Economic Planning. It's different to this person, but meanwhile the same file number. So
Okay.
there was some kind of,
And this is a letter
The chief
written
of
by
staff
who?
give the letters to the president.
you say,
It's a simple question.
I don't work with the Chief of Staff. So that is the question that the Chief of Staff will have to come and answer. That whether the letters so copied, whether he received those letters, and if he did
he inform
briefed
the
the
president?
That
If
one
he
is not
didn't,
for
he
me.
should also be resigned.
That one is not for me to answer.
Okay,
But what
I want us for clarity, sorry to interrupt you, but for clarity, to hear clearly what the president said at that press briefing, because a lot of reference has been made to it. I think it's good for this discussion, so we hear him. So, John, if we can hear the president's sound.
A president does not have the power to ask his minister to make any payment except what is approved in the budget. And of course, when you have a judgment debt, these are paid as a matter of course. When parliamentarians are being paid, they don't need presidential approval. When contractors are being paid for the work they've done, they don't need presidential approval. Perhaps those who are accusing me of having giving directives to the Minister of Finance to pay this amount, perhaps they know something which I don't know. They will sometimes appeal to us. You refer them to the Minister of Finance, they will say, oh, we know we have to pay, but we don't have any money. When I know the plight of our people, when I know our people are crying for water, the basic necessities of life, how can I be so criminally minded, so irresponsible to say give 58 million to one person?
what?
Okay, so that was the president. Just
But we
for
must
clarity.
also position that the president's response was to an issue raised by the minority in parliament earlier, that indeed the president ordered for these payments. And
Okay.
to them, it looks more like it didn't even go through the processes we were discussing. So the president was trying to state that, look, there's no way he will sit down and by stroke of pen say that, oh, because this is supposed to be a member of my party and has done A, B, C, D, I'm asking you, the finance minister,